The most powerful soup to ever come out of Godolphin. Hell, the most powerful that Vought has ever seen.
What if I told you that everything we've been led to believe about CIPHER in genv Season 2 might actually be wrong? What if CIPHER isn't the villain the show keeps trying to convince us he is, but instead a deeply misunderstood character with goals that are far more complicated and maybe even more noble than they seem on the surface? That's the big twist that fans are starting to debate, and after the shocking reveals in Episode 4, it's becoming harder and harder to simply slap a villain label on CIPHER and call it a day. The truth is, he's one of the most fascinating characters the Boys universe has given us so far, and when you peel back the layers, you start to see that his story might not be about destruction, but about evolution. From the very beginning of Season 2, CIPHER has been framed as the new big bad. He's got the mysterious aura, the shady connections, the questionable past, and of course, those chilling powers of absolute mind control. The show clearly wants us to see him as someone dangerous, a direct threat to Marie and her friends, and possibly even the world. But if you actually stop and look closely at his interactions, his words, and even the contradictions in his behavior, you start to realize that CIPHER doesn't fit the traditional mold of a villain at all. Instead, he looks more like a mentor, albeit a dangerous and manipulative one, who might be trying to guide the next generation of soups into something bigger than themselves. Take his relationship with Marie, for example. If CIPHER really only cared about creating a world ruled by soups, why would he waste his time encouraging her? Why would he tell Marie that she has the potential to surpass even Homelander, the most feared and powerful soup alive? A true villain invested in domination would simply embrace Homelander, align himself with him, and build power that way. But CIPHER deliberately avoids answering when Marie asks whether Vought or Homelander would support his vision of creating someone even stronger. That hesitation says everything. It shows that CIPHER doesn't actually want to prop up the current system of power. He wants to break it, reshape it, and maybe even replace it with something purer. And then there's the way he reacts whenever Marie and the others try to spy on him. A typical villain would lash out, eliminate the threat, or manipulate the situation to his advantage. But CIPHER doesn't do that. Instead, he always seems disappointed, not angry, not vengeful, disappointed, almost like a teacher frustrated that his students aren't applying themselves enough. That kind of response hints that CIPHER doesn't see Marie and her friends as enemies. He sees them as potential allies, or at the very least, raw materials that need to be sharpened into something greater. Episode 4 takes this idea even further with the bombshell revelation that CIPHER is not like other soups at all. For a while, Marie and her crew believed he wasn't even superpowered, since he doesn't have compound V in his blood. But when he mind controls Jordan right in front of him, it completely changes the narrative. CIPHER isn't powerless. He's something else entirely. He's a natural-born soup. And in the world of the boys, that's groundbreaking. Almost every superhuman we've seen, from Homelander to A-Train to Soldier Boy, exists because Vought injected them with compound V as children. Their powers are manufactured, and, as we've seen again and again, those powers usually come with terrible side effects. Homelander and Soldier Boy both suffer from deep mental instability. A-Train's body is breaking down because of his speed. Countless others deal with addiction, uncontrollable tempers, or fatal physical weaknesses. CIPHER is different. He doesn't have compound V coursing through his veins. He didn't get his powers from a lab or an experiment. He was born this way. That makes him unique, possibly the only true natural mutant in this universe besides Ryan, Homelander's son. And here's where it gets interesting. Being natural means CIPHER doesn't suffer the same side effects as the others. No instability, no breakdowns, no limitations. His powers are clean, stable, and fully integrated into who he is. That makes him not only rare, but potentially the blueprint for what soups could and should become. And that's exactly why CIPHER is so interested in Marie. Her blood manipulation powers are terrifying, sure, but they're also versatile and incredibly potent. CIPHER sees in her the possibility of a new kind of creation, one where compound V doesn't define a person's limits, but where natural, stable mutations could create the next generation of soups. If Marie can master her abilities, she might even help him build more natural-born soups like himself. It's a vision that sounds both revolutionary and chilling, depending on how you look at it. This also helps explain CIPHER's shady past connections. Remember his ties to old Nazi ideologies? On the surface, that paints him as irredeemable, another villainous soup. clinging to fascist ideals. But if you take it in the context of his goals, it actually lines up with his obsession with purity. The Nazis wanted to engineer a pure human race. CIPHER, disturbingly, seems to want to engineer a pure superhuman race, one that is free of Compound V's flaws, free of Vaught's control, and potentially superior to even Homelander. It doesn't excuse his past or make him moral, but it reframes him as someone driven by ideology, not just evil. That distinction matters because it makes him much harder to pin down. He's not twirling his mustache in the corner, plotting world domination. He's chasing what he believes is the next step in human evolution. Now, of course, CIPHER is still dangerous. Maybe more dangerous than anyone else in the series so far. His ability to fully mind control other supes is already terrifying enough, but the fact that he seems to have been studying Marie and her friends since the end of the Godolkin battle makes it even worse. He wasn't just lurking in the shadows. He was inside their heads, testing them, analyzing them, and pushing them toward their limits. And this is where Andre's death comes into play. Andre was one of the most promising young supes introduced in Season 1. He had raw power, a tragic backstory, and the potential to become a leader. But by Season 2, he's gone. Dead because he pushed his powers too far. On the surface, it looks like a tragic accident, maybe even a result of his own recklessness. But when you consider CIPHER's influence, the picture changes. CIPHER had the means to get inside Andre's mind, to push him harder, to test how far his powers could go. And suddenly, Andre's death doesn't look like an accident at all. It looks like a deliberate choice, a test orchestrated by CIPHER. Either Andre wasn't strong enough to survive the trial, or CIPHER intentionally forced him to the breaking point to eliminate him and clear the path for Marie, who he sees as the true chosen one. That makes CIPHER's character even more morally gray. On the one hand, his vision of a more natural, stable, and pure superhuman race could be seen as a positive step away from Vaught's corrupt empire and Homelander's madness. But on the other hand, the way he pursues that vision, manipulating young supes, testing them until they break, possibly killing them, is undeniably cruel and dangerous. It's the classic question of whether the ends justify the means, and CIPHER clearly believes they do. This is what makes him so compelling. Unlike Homelander, who is a clear-cut monster in a cape, CIPHER is operating in shades of gray. He's not driven by ego or the desire to be worshipped. He's not trying to be the face of Vought or the public's golden boy. He's not even trying to conquer the world in the traditional sense. He's trying to reshape it at the genetic level. And that makes him far scarier, because it means he's not just fighting for himself, he's fighting for an idea. By the end of Episode 4, CIPHER isn't just a villain. He's an ideology wrapped in a man. He's a force that can't be dismissed as another Homelander wannabe. He represents the next evolution of supes, a vision of the future that's both inspiring and horrifying. And the real kicker is that Marie, the girl who started this story as just another pawn in Vaught's machine, is now positioned as the key to making that vision a reality. Whether she embraces that role or resists it is the question that will define not only Season 2, but potentially the future of the entire boys universe. So the next time you hear CIPHER described as the villain of genv, think twice. He's not a villain in the traditional sense. He's not a hero either. He's something else entirely, a disruptor, a visionary, a monster, and maybe even a savior, depending on your perspective. And that complexity is what makes him the most important character the show has introduced so far.